Hello and welcome to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM, as well as online on lakesfm.com. In addition, today, as always, we're on Birmingham Area Municipal Access. Both of our TV stations are on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99. We're also on 88.1 WBFH, The Biff, and online today on Facebook via Facebook Live on the West Bloomfield Township Clerk's Office Facebook page. We are approaching tomorrow's, of course, primary election, the election on Tuesday. Here it's a straight party ballot. Make sure you're only voting for one party on tomorrow's ballot. And if you have more information about registering to vote absentee in tomorrow's elections or submitting your absentee ballots, whatever the question may be, feel free to contact the West Bloomfield Township Clerk's Office if you're in West Bloomfield Township. And if not, you can find more information on our website on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus of ways to contact your local city or township or village clerk for more information on the primary election happening tomorrow. Of course, we are also today on civiccentertv.com. You click on our Watch Live link, and you can watch us live in high definition 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on this Megacast and other original programming on our TV station. And you can also find on-demand footage of today's episode and all of our episodes of the Oakland County Megacast there as well. civiccentertv.com/coronavirus is your home for coronavirus news and information, as well as links to reputable resources from around our community, the statewide, countywide, federally, and from your hometown regarding COVID-19, and for our top stories of the day on COVID-19 and other big stories, including today our top story: Michigan GOP senator tests positive for COVID-19. A Republican state senator who sponsored a bill to limit the emergency powers of Governor Gretchen Whitmer has used to address the pandemic, has tested positive for COVID-19. State Senator Tom Barrett issued a statement on Sunday saying that he does not have, quote, any significant symptoms, end close quote, and will be self-isolating according to medical guidelines. Barrett has been a vocal critic of Whitmer's handling of the coronavirus pandemic and sponsored a bill to repeal the 1945 law Whitmer has used to maintain the state of emergency related to the coronavirus. The 39-year-old said his testing positive does not change how he feels about the way Whitmer has handled the pandemic, and he is opposed to perpetuating a state of emergency that concentrates all political power under one person. Barrett is the first Michigan Republican lawmaker to test positive for COVID-19. So we're seeing some leaders statewide and federally who are also beginning to test positive for COVID-19 as the pandemic continues to progress forward. It becomes more serious in some places and stagnates in others, like the state of Michigan. But that just shows that anybody at any time can fall victim to COVID-19.
We have had a few Democrats that have voted positive, but those were back in the beginning of the pandemic out of the Detroit area. He only found out he was positive because he is a member of the National Guard and needed that test for upcoming training. So it begs to differ how many people are asymptomatic that are walking around that just doesn't even know. You don't know if you are infected or not.
In a lot of these cases, it is a situation like that where you are not necessarily feeling symptoms. You're not going to get tested. You don't absolutely need to get tested, and maybe you're reserving those resources for people that need them, or you're taking your precautions and you feel fine, so you presume safety. But then you end up in a situation where you have to get tested because either you know somebody who's tested positive and you've been in contact with them in recent times, and through contact tracing, you are addressed and urged to get tested, or you're in a situation like State Senator Barrett, where you are a National Guardsman, or you are someone who is on the front lines, and you have to get a test and end up testing positive and being asymptomatic. So it's all the more reason for us to continue to take those precautions seriously, because you truly don't know if somebody who's presumed to be healthy, who is not feeling symptoms, does or does not have the coronavirus.
Well, and on top of that, if you don't know, so you can't stop it. So it goes back to be sure to wash your hands. The good thing is we are starting to see hand sanitizer is widely available right now, and wear a mask.
It's so simple. So simple. So hopefully we won't see too many more of our state and federal leaders become infected, and hopefully through all these precautions we'll continue to minimize who does end up infected with COVID-19 going forward. Also making headlines, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. High school suspends soccer workouts due to the coronavirus. The Berkeley High School boys soccer team is suspending all team gatherings for 14 days after a member of its program tested positive for COVID-19. The Berkeley Athletics Department confirmed the individual received notice of their positive test on August 1st. Out of an abundance of caution, the Berkeley boys and girls cross-country and football programs are suspending team gatherings until further notice because of a possible cross-exposure between teams. The football and cross-country programs have not yet reported a positive test. The coronavirus has caused many issues for programs across the state, especially within the Metro Detroit area, as numerous teams have had to suspend workouts at one point or another in recent months. Currently, official practice for football is set to begin on August 10th. All of the sports begin official practice on August 12th. And as we quickly approach that date, and as we see mounting issues in the professional leagues where they are heavily isolated, where they are often isolated with each other in the case of the National Basketball Association and in the case of the National Hockey League, or they're in very tight situations such as you see in Major League Baseball and you're soon to see in the National Football League should they begin their programs. You're still seeing these mini outbreaks here and there that do pop up that cause mounting issues and have a severe domino effect, even if it's one person being positive and everybody else is simply taking those precautions and quarantining for that 14-day incubation period. It really makes you beg the question of whether or not sports should be played in high schools in the fall, or whether or not, if you're taking kind of an optimistic angle and not wanting to deny another group of kids these opportunities, should we be delaying or suspending these seasons as we continue to get closer to full contact practice days being allowed on August 10th for football, 12th for soccer, and the approaching seasons shortly after.
This has to be such a hard decision for our educators because safety has to come first. But this is not contained, and the more you interact in a group setting, the more people are going to become infected. And maybe even if they're not infected in that setting, you leave, you're not isolated, you're not living in a bubble, so you come back and then more and more people are being exposed to it. I will be surprised if we actually see games a full season. I think they may start out, you have one or two, and then people are going to continue to test positive, and these seasons are going to be shortened. I think it may even happen with baseball on the professional level. We're already seeing they're having a hard time getting in those 60 games because they're having to postpone games and reschedule them because of teams being infected.
Yeah, we're already seeing those issues, as you had said, in professional sports pop up. The NBA's bubble system has worked really well. They haven't had a whole lot of issues with people who are actually in the bubble. It's mostly been people who have been infected when they were preparing to go into the NBA bubble that were being quarantined afterward for positive tests and not going into the bubble at all. But you are seeing in Major League Baseball, these teams are having outbreaks that are a couple of people and then are several people, and then you're seeing games be suspended, teams shut down operations temporarily while they try to figure out how to go forward without potentially putting several infected people out on the field. I think the question is looming for high school sports and for college sports as we're approaching the fall, especially those contact sports like football and like soccer, and even to an extent like tennis, where you are interacting with similar equipment and you're in close proximity on the high school level. We may see these seasons at least be delayed. More news, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Absentee ballots mount prior to the election. Clerks across Michigan are preparing for in-person voting Tuesday that will look drastically different while juggling a record high absentee ballot haul that Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson said could delay results by 1 to 2 days. Nearly 2 million absentee ballots have been submitted to Michigan primary voters through last Tuesday, and 903,000 had returned to local clerks. The initial number far exceeds that for August of 2016. Clerks have scrambled to recruit and train new volunteers for some backed out over COVID-19 concerns, and officials outfitted polling locations and workers with personal protective equipment. Polls open at 7 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. on primary election day. So we're seeing this fight to the finish now as local clerks are organizing their teams for an election that isn't a special election legally, but is a special election in practice because of special circumstances in this case. And with the influx of absentee ballots, we aren't going to see I don't think we're seeing such immediacy with results as we're used to in the state of Michigan, because there's going to be so many of them, such volume, and it's going to take time to get those results tallied and ensure that they are safe and secure.
It's not only been an issue of them getting enough poll workers, but it's the experienced poll workers that have been doing this year after year after year that are opting to choose out this year for this election. I think that's where we're also going to see some issues arise as well. So not just the fact that more and more people are voting absentee, but the lines I think are going to be long for the ones that do choose to vote in person. And keep in mind too, they are saying you do not have to have a mask to vote. However, a lot of areas, I believe, are still asking people to wear a mask if they're coming in because they want to protect those poll workers.
More information on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, a link to that article as well as our last story today. Michigan records 426 new coronavirus cases, no new deaths. Michigan recorded no additional deaths from coronavirus, but added 426 new cases of the disease, COVID-19. The state's overall case tally now reaches 82,782, with a death toll at 6,206, according to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. The state added 7 deaths on Saturday and 8 on Friday. A weekend case recording is typically delayed, state officials say. The state health department has detected increases in cases related to travel in the northern areas of the state and reports of community spread there since early July. Michigan is number 14 among states when ranked for COVID-19 cases and number 6 for deaths linked to the virus, according to tracking by Johns Hopkins University. Of those infected, the statewide fatality rate has dropped from 9.5% in June to 7.5% so far in August. Deaths and hospitalizations due to the virus remain relatively low statewide, as we continue to see, of course, the average age of people infected in this current time being significantly younger than in the March through June or early July period. So this is good news today. 426 new cases. No cases are necessarily good news. The lower number, it's significantly lower than our average has been over the last several days. Definitely lower than our high numbers in the high 600s, early 700s, all the way ranging to up to 1,000 cases when you bring in those delayed results. This is a much better sign. No deaths, 426 new cases. That's about where we were before our little spike was happening.
And I know that they say typically the numbers are lower on Mondays due to that delay in testing, or maybe fewer people are getting tested on the weekends. However, the good thing and the trend in all of this is, like you said, Tyler, we're not seeing near as many people needing to be hospitalized. And that is a good sign going forward. And hopefully if we can remain this flattened state, then it will allow for some comfort for parents and the decision making of taking their kids back to school in the fall.
More information on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, including links to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the State of Michigan, Oakland County, and coronavirus pages from your local municipalities, including West Bloomfield Township. And our first guest today is the Supervisor of the Charter Township of West Bloomfield. We are pleased to be joined once again by Steve Kaplan on the Oakland County Megacast. Supervisor Kaplan, thank you for being with us today.
Good morning, Tyler. I'm going to remove my mask.
Go ahead. Wonderful.
Just to show you, at our office, we're very vigilant about wearing masks and maintaining social distancing.
Yes, you are. I've been inside Town Hall recently. We provide some broadcast equipment to the clerk's office for election training during the election seasons. And going into Town Hall, you walk in, it's a completely different experience than in normal times. You are stopped at the front door by a sign on the door that's asking you to do a symptom check on yourself. Turn around if you're feeling any of those symptoms. And of course, there's abilities to open the doors touchless by interacting with a handicap opening button. You can go in. There's hand sanitizer stations all throughout the main lobby area of Town Hall, as well as social distancing markers. How has that experience been for residents from what you've been told, from what your departments have been told since those were implemented? Has it made operations at Town Hall a little bit tougher for the people of West Bloomfield? Maybe it's a little bit easier. Maybe it's a little bit of both. How's that been going for you, Steve?
We are proud to note that since June 3rd, Tyler, Town Hall has been fully open 8 in the morning until 4:30, Monday through Friday. I think our residents take assurance. They are relieved when they see that we have plexiglass between them and the staff, the social distancing, of course, the requirement of wearing masks, the 6-foot rule, as we discussed, and plus hand sanitizer throughout Town Hall. So our staff is feeling comfortable. We have 91 employees at Town Hall, and we have not had one case of coronavirus to our knowledge. Certainly, there might have been a case that's asymptomatic, but nobody has contracted the virus to our knowledge, and we attribute that to good hygiene and good follow-through by our staff.
So, Steve, initially June 3rd, you mentioned, was when Town Hall had reopened to the public. Is it back to full regular operations there with all departments active and open with full staff? Is it still at partial capacity? Are there some things that are being done at Town Hall and some that still remain virtual? What's the status on that in West Bloomfield?
Good question. Our staff is here, all of them except for 3. We have 3 employees who are able to work from home, and because they have the computer, they have the layout, and they are accustomed to working from home from time to time. But the other 88 are here, whether part-time or full-time. We have 5 part-time employees and 86 full-time employees at Town Hall.
Steve Kaplan with us. He is the Supervisor of West Bloomfield Township with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Steve, in addition, throughout this pandemic, like most municipalities, the Open Meetings Act has been modified in order to allow for virtual meetings so that you're preventing having the general public in person at Town Hall or in other municipalities at City or Village Hall for these municipal meetings. They're still ongoing. The next Township Board meeting is on Monday, August 17th, and that is a virtual meeting, as well as the auxiliary boards as well. Do you presume that that is going to continue in West Bloomfield Township for the foreseeable future, or could people expect soon, potentially, a return to Town Hall for these municipal meetings?
We anticipate, Tyler, that the governor's office, through extending an executive order, will permit or allow the virtual meetings all the way through the end of the year. Now, if we're given latitude, if we're given discretion to either conduct the meetings virtually or with full public attending, we would opt for the virtual meetings because that would make our staff and the visitors safe. As you know, as of now, you can't have more than 10 individuals in a room for a so-called indoor public gathering, and we can never keep it at fewer than 10 because we would have at least 10 employees. But the virtual meetings have been working, and surprisingly for me, a person who's been on the board since 2000, who's accustomed to the live meetings in the boardroom, they have been successful, and I think our board members have flourished. I don't think the public is being disadvantaged at all by way of the virtual meetings. We make it easy, Tyler, for any resident to participate by, we provide the Zoom number, and we have had residents participate by public comment. Also, you're showing the meetings live, I believe, and then they're available through Civic Center TV to be viewed anytime as a so-called rerun.
Steve, would this be a platform or coming up with a hybrid once we are able to actually meet in person again? could there be a hybrid situation going forward for the people who, for whatever reason, couldn't come to City Hall? Would that be a possibility, like next year or something, or keeping that going?
I like your idea because we as a government, we abide by the Open Meetings Act as our public expects. But we want to be as transparent as possible. You know, we don't have the secret, the code to Fort Knox here for Coca-Cola or the combination lock for Fort Knox. So we want to be as transparent to the public. We want to be as informative as we can. We're not trying to hide anything here. In fact, public participation, even if it's as minimal as watching a meeting, benefits the public because they'll learn what local government is doing. For many people, they don't deal with county, state, or federal government. When they need something, it might be as simple as a permit or an inspection of a deck in the backyard. They're dealing with town hall, and they want to know that town hall is accountable, that the employees at town hall care. And you'll see, you've been at town hall, so you know that our employees tend to be very, very responsive and polite. We don't tolerate bad attitudes here. If you had a bad day and you're here at work, you had a bad yesterday, leave it at home because we expect the public to be treated with courtesy and respect and competence.
Steve Kaplan with us. He is the Township Supervisor for West Bloomfield Township with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Steve, last week we talked to Bill Anderson from SEMCOG about how our municipalities are going to continue to be affected by the COVID-19 pandemic even long after the pandemic has concluded, particularly in budgeting and in state profit sharing after the pandemic has concluded. He said for this particular year, municipalities are in a decent spot. They're going to be able to get through pretty well considering the circumstances, but it's the next year and the years after that where they're going to be seeing these residual issues related to the pandemic. What's the status of West Bloomfield Township, and what are people like yourself and your other full-time board members like Terry Weingart and Debbie Binder and the rest of the Township Board of Trustees as well working on to ensure that as minimal of a hit as possible is taken by West Bloomfield Township as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, excellent matter for you to raise. As you know, a municipality's main sources of income are through real estate, through taxes, through ownership of property, real property. And then we have what's called revenue sharing, statewide revenue sharing, and that's based on sales taxes. For the year 2020, we anticipate revenue sharing to be in the amount of $5.9 million or about $1.5 million per quarter. Now that amount in 2021 might be reduced because of reduced sales taxes. And if so, we are equipped to meet that. We've been very conservative and frugal in our budgeting over the years, and we have what one would call a healthful or healthful fund balance, fund equity balance, rainy day fund, whatever phrase you want to use. So we're careful. And that what I mean by that is, let's say, and I don't expect this to happen, we took a 25% reduction. We incurred a 25% reduction on sales taxes, on revenue sharing. We would not have to close town hall. We would not have to lay off. We've been very careful in our budgeting. When we have an opening, we oftentimes do not fill that position for months unless it's essential, because we're trying to maintain, we want to maintain full staff. The last thing we want to do, Tyler, is lay off our employees who have been very loyal to us. The last thing we want to do is reduce hours for town hall. We're only open, say, 9 to 3. So I think our residents can be confident that even if the financial setting is not rosy for 2021 or 2022, we are here to face it and meet it.
Steve, can we shift a little bit to the elections tomorrow with the primaries? Any concern about the possibility of the delay in the results and how that can impact the city of West Bloomfield?
Sure. So that's a statewide issue. There might be delays. Normally, we're accustomed here in West Bloomfield for having the votes counted by 10 p.m., which is astounding when you think the polls close at 8. Sometimes it's as early as 9:30 where we have all the tabulations. That might be delayed, but if so, no more than any other municipality. Our clerk's office is well staffed. You have wonderful people working there. We've had individuals working in the elections division for years, and they are above grade. I mean, they set the example. So if our results are not available until early morning, that probably will parallel the rest of the state.
Steve Kaplan with us. He's the West Bloomfield Township Supervisor with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Steve, even in spite of all the traditions in the township that have been modified or have been lost, of course, for example, the Michigan Week Community Awards breakfast celebrating volunteers ended up being virtual this year instead of being in person. Other major summer events like the food truck rally, the art show, even the St. Mary's Fair, which isn't in West Bloomfield Township but does bring in a lot of people from West Bloomfield, have been canceled, have been postponed, have been modified in some way, but yet the municipal services in West Bloomfield, such as the library, is reopened for operations. West Bloomfield Parks continues to provide services. Speak on how critical those services are to West Bloomfield Township and how much their pivoting during the coronavirus pandemic has meant to West Bloomfield Township on the municipal level, but also to the people of the township as well.
Quality of life is important, and for many people, life consists of more than working and being with family. It's the hobbies, it's the avocations, it's the interests, it's being able to go to a concert, the ability to visit the library at any time. So our library, as you know, is open. The services are limited. The Parks Commission programs have been ongoing, of course, with limited participation. Can't have more than 100 people at an outdoor gathering. But we're hoping that life will return to normality for many of our residents, because this has been ongoing now, this pandemic, for nearly 5 months. And although 5 months isn't even a half a year, we can barely remember what life was like before the pandemic. So you're right about that, Tyler. These events that make West Bloomfield special and other communities special, some of them have been curtailed or canceled, like the art fair. We were very disappointed that the art fair, presided over by Patty DeRosny from Hot Rocks Incorporated, that's one of the jewels of our township. And every summer for 2 days, our residents have the opportunity to enjoy partaking in the art fair. And the fact that it was canceled through the Oakland County Health Department was a disappointment to all of us. And one event you'll be pleased to know, which we think we're going to hold this year, will be Household Hazardous Waste Day on September 24 and September 25.
Steve, how do you plan for the future, not knowing what is happening and how long this is going on? From someone who's leading a community, how do you make those decisions? Is it just multiple scenarios that's playing out?
Well, one of the beauties of local government is you have, and this is so obvious, you have individuals living in the community making the decision. So our township board, if you look at the 7 of us, we have varying backgrounds, different educations, different professions and vocations. And so the 7 of us have a good pulse on the community because all 7 of us are active in the community. So we have an idea what the public wants, but we're ready. It would be no different than you and your household. I don't know anything about you personally, but if you suffered, I don't know whether you're married with a family, but if you suffered a 25% reduction in your salary, that's going to affect your life. Now, can you survive it for a year or 2? Sure, if you have savings. But you cut back, you reduce expenditures, and that's what we're doing. We are very careful in spending money because, remember, it's not our money. That money belongs to the taxpayers, to our residents.
Steve Kaplan with us. He is the West Bloomfield Township Supervisor with us on the Oakland County Megacast as we continue to cover the coronavirus pandemic as it affects the people of West Bloomfield Township on Civic Center TV and Lakes FM, as well as our neighboring municipalities on our family of TV and radio stations. Steve, we have such great emergency service leadership in the local area. Chief Patton and Deputy Chief Lawson from the West Bloomfield Police Department have been excellent in providing information to the public on the coronavirus pandemic and everything that affects it. They've been great working with local businesses to help prepare them for all the changes that have been ongoing throughout this pandemic. And then Chief Flynn from the West Bloomfield and Tri-City Fire Department, similarly, him and his team have also done an excellent job in keeping the public informed about the coronavirus as our information continues to change. Speak on those services as well as it relates to the people of West Bloomfield Township and just how critical our leadership from our local first responders and emergency services leadership has been in battling this pandemic in West Bloomfield.
Residents who have heard me speak might view me as an ambassador or a cheerleader for our public safety divisions. One could say that I'm biased in their favor, and I am. And one reason is we've had continuity and stability in our fire department and police department. We tend to hire from within. Now, there's nothing wrong with hiring a police chief from outside your community or a fire chief. But as long as I've been part of this board, we always have promoted deputy chief to the chief, the assistant fire chief to fire chief. So what does that mean? It means we have in Greg Flynn and Mark Lowry on the fire department side, and Mike Patton and Kurt Lawson on the police department side, individuals who have been part of our township for 10 years, 20 years, 25 years. So Tyler, they know the community, and you know them well because you've seen them over the years. But I can't say they're the best fire chief and police chief in the world or even the county because I don't know everybody, but I can say that it would be hard for anybody to exceed the skills of our fire chief and police chief. And our millage, we sought a millage renewal for public safety in 2018, and it passed 82% to 18%. What does that mean? It means that our community is satisfied with public safety. And they know that if they call 911, they are likely to have a police vehicle, police vehicles, or fire department vehicles in fewer than 4 minutes. Imagine that. Fewer than 4 minutes. That's life-saving for somebody whose heart stopped or somebody who had a stroke. So we are very pleased with our dispatchers and all of our firefighters and police officers, and we say we can compare with any community.
Steve, just another minute or two with you before we let you go. Anything else that you'd like to touch on or that's important for the people of West Bloomfield to know before we say goodbye today?
Well, know that we're concerned about your success, your happiness, your safety, and your health, and we're doing all we can here to enhance that. And I want to thank you again and Civic Center TV for all you do for our community. Because anybody who wants to know what is occurring in our community just needs to tune in on 89.3 Lakes FM or Civic Center TV. You are full of knowledge there.
Well, we appreciate that from you, Steve, and we appreciate having you on today. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Appreciate it. Steve Kaplan, West Bloomfield Township Supervisor, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll speak to Michigan State Representative Jim Ellison from the 26th District. You're watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast on our family of TV and radio stations. Ronnie Dahl and I will return after this quick break.
Hi, my name is Kurt Lawson, and I'm the Public Information Officer for West Bloomfield Township. We wanted to reach out to you, our older adults, to provide information that you may find useful during this difficult time. We want to ensure you that West Bloomfield Town Hall, our Waters and Utility Department, West Bloomfield Parks, and our police and fire departments continue to work hard on your behalf. Information and resources can be found on the Township website, the police Facebook and Twitter, or call West Bloomfield Parks COVID-19 Help Hotline. Please remember to keep your social distance of at least 6 feet, wear facial coverings when you leave your home, and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap. These precautions will help keep you safe during these difficult times.
This may seem uncomfortable, but so is being hooked to an IV, sleeping in a hospital bed, and fighting for your life. When it comes to COVID-19, comfort is not as important as saving lives. Wearing a mask can greatly reduce the chance of spreading the virus. So mask up, Michigan, every time you leave home.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. In addition, today, as always, we're on Birmingham Area Municipal Access and on 88.1 WBFH, the BIF. Today, we thank the West Bloomfield Township Clerk's Office. They are our Facebook partner via Facebook Live. You can find more information on their Facebook page about tomorrow's upcoming elections, the primary elections in West Bloomfield and all throughout the state of Michigan as we prepare for, of course, the major November elections. And this is the last big step before the general elections, choosing who will be the final candidates on the ballot, as well as other key municipal issues in West Bloomfield and in our coverage area as well. You can find more information from your local clerk's office about tomorrow's elections for specifics to your hometown. If you need to find information on how to contact them and get to your municipality's website, you can go to civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, and we have links to many of our municipalities in our coverage area here on the Megacast network of community TV, radio, and other media outlets. And thank you for joining us today as we continue to talk about the coronavirus pandemic and other major news stories as it relates to our community with expert guests, including our next guest, Representative Jim Ellison from Michigan's 26th District. He is one of our state representatives with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Representative Ellison, thank you for being with us today.
It's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
We're pleased to have you on with us since we've last spoken. How have you been? How's your team been, Representative?
I'm sorry?
Since we've last spoken to you, how have you been? How's your team been?
Oh, no, we're good. We're busy. We got back up to Lansing and did a little bit of work, and now we're on break again. But everybody's healthy, and I keep getting myself tested. I'm negative still, so that's a good thing.
That's good to hear. Representative Ellison, the last time we spoke to you, the last couple times we've spoken to you, one of the major issues we've covered with you has been the state's unemployment backlog, and we since haven't heard as much about that anymore. It seems like some of those a lot of those cases have begun to be resolved, but that's still unemployment's still a major issue in the state, especially as the federal subsidies are set to expire very soon. And the people of Michigan are going to be on a very reduced income. Any discussion at the Capitol in Lansing about increasing or modifying the state unemployment benefits to better benefit those in Michigan who are on unemployment and may not receive any further federal subsidies?
Well, there hasn't been any discussions that I've been privy to. A lot of those discussions happen on the other side of the aisle. But as far as the current claims, the numbers are coming down. We still have a lot of outstanding claims out there that people are still fighting with. My staff continues to work with them. The numbers are smaller, but they're still bigger than they should be. But as far as extension of benefits, we're going up there again Thursday. We're going to meet. Maybe some ideas will pop there, but I haven't heard anything yet.
Representative Jim Ellison with us from Michigan's 26th District, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. So we've had a lot of changes, of course, throughout the COVID-19 pandemic as Governor Whitmer and her team in Lansing continue to address the COVID-19 pandemic and its ever-changing ebbs and flows, including recently the new mask order requiring wearing of facial coverings in public indoor places and in certain outdoor gatherings beyond a certain population of people being present. Part of what happened in enacting that executive order was announcing that it was in place the day it went into effect, using the emergency alert system. And the governor came in under a little bit of fire for that decision to use the emergency alert system. Do you believe that was a proper use of the emergency alert system to inform the people of a new law being enacted, or was that an overstep, in your opinion, for the governor?
I'm not going to second guess the governor. She's got a lot of resources at her fingers to get the message out. And if her and her team felt that was the proper mechanism to get the alert out, I think what she was trying to do is make sure that everybody heard it. Everybody knew that the rules had changed. Now it was mandatory. I'm not going to second guess whether it was a proper use of the emergency notification system. But it was available, and they did use it.
You're so passionate about our natural resources. Do you think attention is being directed away from some of those concerns and pollution during this pandemic and even some of the resources?
Yeah, I think during the pandemic, we're getting our attention diverted from a lot of priorities. I mean, the pandemic is our priority right now, and we've got to make sure that we get through this, and the emphasis is taken off a lot of things. I mean, I have my pet projects I'm working on that are sitting by the wayside, waiting for us to try to fix what we're in right now. But yeah, it's still we can't ignore the environment, at all. We've got to get back onto it. We're all looking forward to some kind of normalcy, returning back to Lansing and us getting back on the, on the trail of getting stuff done. That being said, I mean, we still have a few months of election in front of us, and we'll have a new legislature in place in January, and all bets are off. We'll see what happens.
So let's talk a little bit about the elections tomorrow. Any concerns from your standpoint about the election during this pandemic?
Concerns as far as problems with the election process itself, or concerns about my particular seat or anything else? I mean, we've all heard the concerns. I think there's a lot of red flag being raised out there by a lot of people, but I think we need to be diligent. I'm really concerned about absentee ballots. I think the Postal Service was artificially impacted by certain decisions made at the federal level to try to slow the mail down. And so we've got to make sure people get their absentee ballots in the clerk's office. They've got to be in there by 8 o'clock tomorrow. Hand deliver them. Don't rely on the mail at this point. I've got some concerns with things that have happened, like in the 2016 election. What's going to happen? And we're all really concerned, and any number of things. So it's a scary time. It used to be a time you could trust your elections and go in and the victor would emerge, and too many questions right now. So yeah, from that aspect, I'm concerned about it. My personal respect, I'm unopposed in the primary, so tomorrow's like a day off for me.
Representative Jim Ellison with us. He represents Michigan's 26th district in the State House of Representatives, with us on the Oakland County Megacast today. Representative Ellison, as we are approaching the fall and the schools are getting prepared to reopen, the state, of course, is still working on their state budget. There's another revenue estimating conference that's going to be happening this month that is going to impact ultimately the schools and other services throughout the state going forward in 2021 and beyond. How do you work as a representative, whether it's within your party, whether it's across the aisle, a little bit of both, to ensure that you're inflicting minimal damage given the circumstances on these critical services, while also addressing the state of emergency that we're in, dealing with a pandemic and having to create a balanced budget altogether in that process?
I think we recently just passed the supplemental budget to take care of the current budget year with all the unexpected costs and expenses we had. And I think the process itself proved itself to be very, very good. We worked bipartisan. It was a joint effort. And, we all know that the budget is the main part of our job. Our job is to allocate funds so that the state can function. And we all go up there with that understanding that is what we're supposed to do. So working on a budget is usually one of the things we can cooperate on for the most part. I mean, obviously, we all want certain aspects, more money or less money or whatever. And we have those battles. But by the time we get and put a budget on the floor for a vote, we're usually in alignment for the most part. And I think we can do that again. We're all understanding the crisis we're in, and we've got to start working on the next budget. And my feeling is, regardless of what happens in November, we're still going to be on board to work together to get the budget done.
What happens if we don't get federal dollars to help plug some of these holes in the budget?
We're going to have to do some cutbacks. I mean, again, those are the things we're going to fight about. I don't know what we're going to do yet. I would hope the federal government would come through with some money. But again, there's no guarantees on that. We've got to see what's going to happen. But yeah, there certainly could be some cuts. I mean, obviously, we've got to provide all of the mandatory and stuff required. I mean, I think public safety and everything is going to be a high priority. Funding the cities, funding the schools are going to be high priorities. But do we fund them at the level you used to, or are we going to have to roll back? We don't know yet.
Representative Jim Ellison with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Representative, just another few minutes with you before we have to let you go. Are there any other important topics that you'd like to discuss, or any other messages that you have for your constituents while you still have time with us today before we let you go?
Well, other than, the thing that's on everybody's tip of their tongue right now is what's going to happen in the schools. And, we've got opinions on a broad spectrum. My personal opinion is I don't think we should go back to school in the fall. I think this pandemic, we're not anywhere close to being through with it yet. I think we're going to see a rise. I think we're going to see changes. And my personal opinion is we probably should not go back to school in the fall one-on-one. That being said, the districts are going to be responsible. If they feel they can come up with a plan that's going to keep the teachers safe, keep the students safe, keep the public safe, that's going to be their right to do that. And obviously there's going to be parents that don't want to send their kids. And, it's just one of those things. It's the uncertainty. We're in brand new territory right now. None of us have gone through this before. So each day comes and it's a new set of problems, and we'll just, as we always have done, we'll manage to get ourselves through it.
Representative Ellison, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Representative Jim Ellison from Michigan's 26th District with us on the Oakland County Megacast. And just goes to show just how many issues, Ronnie, we are dealing with on the state level. And that also amounts to issues that are being dealt with on local levels and on the federal level as well, as we're battling through this pandemic. And I'd really like the point that Representative Ellison had made about his advocacy for environmental issues, about it, even his advocacy for education issues and balancing the budget, that we're focused on so many different crises, but the number one crisis to get through right now is still this ongoing pandemic. And you have to be able to find that balance as a leader in his position and in the position of other representatives, state senators, even Governor Whitmer and her team, to battle those issues in a manner that prioritizes them, but doesn't minimalize the impact of the other issues that are not directly COVID-19 related.
And we're all intertwined. Your local leaders are waiting for your state leaders are waiting for your federal leaders, and so it's so entwined in this decision-making process to get it down to the decisions made and clearly made and communicated to the general public, because we're waiting on them to make these decisions to help us through this pandemic, but they're juggling so many different issues and it's changing every day. I think that's the hardest thing for this, is we like certainty as much as we can have certainty, and this has been changing every day. And as they learn new information about the virus, then they have to shift the plan that was just put into place to direct the new information and what they've learned now.
Yeah, and there's just so many variables still in place. You don't know what's going to happen with the budget yet. The state has made an impact. We had Chris Kolb on the governor's most recent press conference, the state budget director, talking about how by now they were hoping they were going to be well under the way, getting that budget done, possibly having it balanced and ready to be passed through the houses of the state Congress. And because of the ongoing pandemic and the continued impact that that's having financially on municipalities, on the state, on the federal level, they're continuing to kick that can down the road strategically so that they can do another revenue estimating conference this month and make sure that if they are putting these dollar amounts down the paper, that they are ensuring they're making as minimal damage as possible, especially to situations like that with the schools, where decisions made now maybe aren't necessarily going to make are not maybe necessarily going to have immediate impact financially on these school districts, but a year or two down the road, 2 or 3 years down the road, they're certainly going to have an impact. And this could be the difference between continuing critical programs in these schools, providing those resources in these schools, continuing to employ many of the people on the staff and the faculty of these schools, or not. And I think that our leaders are trying to balance all of that while still leading in a time of crisis.
we're getting down to the wire now with kids going back to school. I know some colleges are even starting earlier because they're going to be getting out earlier. And these are decisions that parents have to make now. So if you're sending your kid to college, you have to know, do you need housing? If it's remote learning, then do you keep them home? Or then now you're paying for housing where they're going to be back home. Same thing with, students here locally. Do you send them to the classroom? Do you need childcare? How do you get childcare? And signing up for these services to try to get a spot. And there's a financial aspect to all of this and your family budget as well. And so we need the leaders to make decisions so that people can make the plans, families can make the plans that are best for their families so that they can get through this.
And we all have our issues that we're focused on too, from a state, local, federal level. We all have those issues that are close and dear to our hearts, and we all want to get through the COVID-19 pandemic. That's certainly a priority, I would think, on every American and every Michigander, every Oakland County resident's mind right now. But at the same time, especially after our conversation with Representative Ellison, I think that we have to have more of a sense of patience as well as the people of the state of Michigan and the county on a federal level, just because there are so many issues that are being worked through that are critical issues. But the pandemic response is priority number one, and if there's a little bit of focus being lost on some other issues in the process, that's going to come with the territory. So patience is going to be key as our leaders continue to work through these complicated situations and try to do so creatively, try to do so effectively, and do so quickly as well, because we all want to solve these problems sooner rather than later so we can get back to some semblance of normal life. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll check in on our local elections as we're getting down to the wire. Just a day from now, we will be voting for the Michigan primary elections, and a lot of people are getting ready or are in process today of submitting their absentee ballots. We'll speak to a local clerk out in the field with our reporter, Erica Jones. Coming up after the break, you're watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast on our family of TV and radio stations.
As rivals, we don't always see eye to eye.
Like who scored the best recruits?
Who's gonna be who?
And whether we wear green
or blue.
But one thing we can all agree on to help stop the spread of COVID-19. Wear a mask.
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 The ball's in your court, Michigan.
Michigan, the coronavirus pandemic has put us all to the test. And now it's time to put COVID-19 to the test. As we move forward, testing will be critical. We encourage anyone who has reason to get tested to do so, those with symptoms and those without. If you are leaving home and going back to work, get tested. If you think you may have COVID-19 or you've been exposed recently through family, friends, or coworkers, get tested. Our test locator tool can help you find the right testing site that fits your needs. Even if you're looking for easy access with no cost, no prescription, and no appointment necessary, we've got you covered. Help Michigan move forward, not backward. To find a testing site or learn more, visit michigan.gov/coronavirus test. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM, our flagship stations here on the Megacast network of community television, radio, and other media outlets. In addition, today, as always, 88.1 WBFH The Biff out of Bloomfield Hills, Birmingham area municipal access out of Birmingham, Bingham Farms, Beverly Hills, and the village of Franklin. And today on Facebook Live, via the West Bloomfield Township Clerk's Office Facebook page as the Clerk's Department in West Bloomfield and other municipalities locally and throughout the state prepare for tomorrow's primary elections. We're down to the wire. There's a huge influx of absentee ballots coming in. Election worker shortages continue even in an election in special times like this. And our municipalities are hard at work at this point in time, preparing for tomorrow as we get down to the wire with the elections. And we have out in the field with us now our field reporter Erica Jones checking in with West Bloomfield Township's clerk's office at Town Hall. Erica.
Hi, Tyler. I'm here at West Bloomfield Town Hall outside with West Bloomfield Township Clerk Debbie Binder, and we are outside here next to the ballot drop box where we reported from a couple weeks ago, and she's going to tell us a little bit about tomorrow's primary election, what to expect, and everything we need to know. So, hi, Debbie. Thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you, and thank you, Tyler, for checking in, and Erica for checking in. It's really important that we get the word out. People should not rely on the mail right now. They have to bring that ballot back to Town Hall. Ballot can be back to Town Hall by 8 p.m. tomorrow evening. They can still request a ballot today until 4 p.m. It's a hard stop at 4 p.m. by election law, but they have to come to Town Hall to request that ballot, and they would have to vote that ballot right here at Town Hall. They cannot take it with them. So if you want to get a ballot, please come out today. We do have a big delay in the mail, so if you have any question if your ballot arrived, you can check at the Michigan Voter Information Center, or you can call the clerk's office. If your ballot did not arrive yet, you could come down today, get an absentee ballot. We will reject and spoil the one that you were issued and get you a new ballot. So if you have any questions, please contact the clerk's office or check the Michigan Voter Information Center. Again, we recommend you either bring that ballot back to Town Hall to the clerk's office or use one of our drop boxes. This is our brand new ballot drop box, and we have an additional drop box on the other side of the building. So there's one on the east side of the building, one on the west side of the building. The east side is a gray box that's shared with, it says utility bills, water bills, and tax payments and ballots. And you can put it in either one, and it can go in that box till 8 o'clock tomorrow night. Those boxes will be checked at 8 p.m. exactly tomorrow night.
What happens if someone comes to a polling location without a mask?
If someone comes to a polling location without a mask, we have a few steps to try to encourage mask wearing. We cannot force the public to wear a mask. They are exempt from the executive order because somebody can't have their constitutional right to vote taken away by an executive order. So we have a sign that we have in the precinct that's meant to appeal to their sensitivities and sensibilities and maybe a little guilt mixed in there to hope and encourage them to wear a mask. If they don't wear a mask, do have masks. If they still aren't wearing one, we do have masks available to offer them and encourage. And the third step would be to move them through as quickly as we can and get them through there. But we cannot deny a voter their right to vote based on not wearing a mask.
Are you allowed to approach individuals about wearing masks, or do you just have to assume that they have?
We can encourage mask wearing. We can offer them the mask to wear, but we cannot deny them their right to vote if they refuse to wear one. Okay. And our hope is that most people will choose to wear one. I think it's becoming more commonplace, and I think people recognize the benefit. And I hope, and hopefully not naively, I hope that people will, accommodate for the good of everybody.
For sure. And are we still expecting delayed election results tomorrow?
Our goal, and I know that that's been getting a lot of press, is what is behind an absent voter counting board are human beings. And you cannot release those human beings until the ballots are all counted. So we have worked hard to maintain a manageable number of ballots per team so that we can get our people out of here. To keep people 36, 48 hours is inhumane. So we are going to work extremely hard to make sure that we have a sufficient number of people processing the ballots so that we know that we don't have to keep ours that late, and we'll have our results quicker. Best way to get results if the people are looking for them is from the county, because we do transmit the results to the county at the end of the evening, and they will have the quickest update by watching the county's website and watching the results come in.
So should people be able to see results by tomorrow evening, or is that not guaranteed?
I can only speak for West Bloomfield, and my goal would be that they're going to see results by tomorrow evening for sure.
Okay, that's great. Now, is there anything else that West Bloomfield and our surrounding areas need to know about tomorrow's election to be prepared?
I guess one thing I would add, and I know that we're looking ahead to the November election, which we know will be even larger. Right now we have 21,000 ballots out and about 12,000 in. We know it's going to be at least double that come November. And based on our experience with the mail right now and the mail being delayed, I would recommend that everybody get their applications in as early as possible and that everybody try to vote early. And that doesn't mean early voting. That means get your your application and get your ballot. Ballots for the November election will go out the end of September and will be available the end of September. Don't wait till last minute. We have many people's ballots and their apps taking 10 to 13 days to get to town hall. Don't wait till last minute. I want every single person to have their right to vote and their right to be heard. So don't wait till last minute. We can't control the mail. We call, we ask questions, but ultimately the mail gets here when it does. So please don't wait till last minute. That's the most important message now and for the future.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate the update, and we look forward to a smooth election come tomorrow and in the future.
Anytime. And thank you so much for reaching out and making this an important part of your education. Thank you.
All right, Tyler. Well, there you go. We're all ready for tomorrow's primary election.
Erica, thank you very much. Erica Jones alongside Debbie Binder at West Bloomfield Town Hall. Of course, she was out there at the West Bloomfield Town Hall's absentee ballot drop-off box. Those votes are due by tomorrow. They have to be into the clerk's office by 8 p.m. To reiterate what Clerk Binder had been saying in her conversation with Erica, the clerk's office in West Bloomfield and in many other municipalities, these other clerks have also been suggesting that you bring your absentee ballots directly to your city, township, or village hall, to their clerk's office or to their absentee ballot drop-off box, and do not rely on the mail, those delays that the United States Postal Service is experiencing are most likely at this point in time not going to get your absentee ballot submitted to the local clerk's office by that 8 p.m. poll closing cutoff tomorrow for the primary election. So you are suggested by your local clerks to submit your absentee votes in person at your local city, township, or village hall. Those votes are due. Hard deadline of 8 p.m. tomorrow when the polls close. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we will speak on federal COVID-19 and other related issues with U.S. Representative Andy Levin next on the Oakland County Megacast. You're watching and listening to us on a family of TV and radio stations, including 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, and Civic Center TV. We will return after this break.
Michigan, we still need to stay careful because we don't want to go backwards. Back to where we started. So keep standing 6 feet apart. Keep wearing a mask in public. And if you have symptoms, talk to a healthcare provider about getting tested. To move forward, let's all do our part. So stay careful. Michigan.gov/coronavirus. Michigan, we're calling on you to save lives. Don't ignore it. Don't let it go to voicemail. It's urgent. In fact, it's critical. Because if you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19, you may have been exposed to the virus. And you could get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department. So please answer the call to learn how to protect yourself, your family, and friends. We're calling on you to stop the spread of COVID-19. To make it safe to reopen businesses and help Michigan move forward. So if you get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department, you may have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. To protect us all, answer the call. Learn more at michigan.gov/containcovid. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Welcome back. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM, the flagship stations on the Megacast network of community television and radio stations, as well as other media outlets here in the Oakland County area. We thank you for joining us today and every day, Monday through Friday, live from 10 a.m. to 12 noon on our network of community TV, radio, and media outlets, as well as online in high definition, CivicCenterTV.com, and on demand on CivicCenterTV.com, where you can watch full episodes, short clips, and entire interviews on demand 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including interviews like our interview now with the U.S. Representative Andy Levin, joining us on the Oakland County Megacast once again. Representative Levin, thank you for being with us today.
Hey, Tyler, it's so great to hear your voice, and I'm really glad to be on Megacast.
Yeah, good to have you back. Since we last spoke, how have you been? How has your team been?
Oh, thanks for asking. My family's good. We're trying to stay safe, and, there's a big silver lining in having more kids home than we ever expected to have. Again, living at home because of the COVID-19 crisis. But it sure is a devastating situation for our nation.
It absolutely is. And you mentioned having kids back at home. A lot of families are preparing to return their kids to school in the coming weeks as the fall semester begins. Some schools planning to be entirely in person, some planning a hybrid method of in-person and virtual. Some have decided to remain entirely virtual for the foreseeable future. You recently co-signed a letter with the Michigan delegation to U.S. Secretary of Education Betsy Devos to stop her from diverting federal CARES Act monies from public schools to private schools. Could you explain a little bit about that, as Michigan did, of course, join 4 other states in a lawsuit against the Secretary of Education for this similar issue, and explain what was going on, what the letter from yourself and the rest of the Michigan delegation that had signed it was about, that you sent to U.S. Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos?
Sure. Well, Secretary DeVos, for many, many years, long before she became Secretary of Education, her life mission has really been to undermine universal public education in America. And she worked on that in Michigan, and now she's trying to make that happen for the whole country. And she's perfectly entitled to her own views and her, own advocacy. But now she runs the U.S. Department of Education, and her job is to put into practice laws that Congress passes. We passed the CARES Act that provided funds for public schools, as the federal government does, and specifically really for poorer kids, districts with more kids in poverty, English language learners, kids with learning disabilities. And what she did here is she simply took money that in the pandemic, Congress very clearly designated for public schools. And as I mentioned, really trying to help those most affected by the crisis. And she said, well, I'm just going to divert a significant amount of this money to private schools. And the thing that's probably most shocking about it, Tyler, is not even based on any of the metrics we had for the public schools. So the most wealthy private schools would get money on an equal basis with poor kids and, our poorest, Mount Clemens or Pontiac or whatever our poor public school districts are here. It's just outrageous. And so it violates the letter and the intent of Congress, of the CARES Act that we passed. And so we're telling her, you just can't do that.
So with that situation being what it is, where does that money go? Is that being decided by the U.S. Secretary of Education? Is that being decided by the United States Congress in the Senate in their passing of the Federal CARES Act? Or is that a crisis where that money is being kind of pulled one way and pulled the other by either side, and we could have a situation where these schools are getting those funds on a delayed basis? What's the status of these Federal CARES Act dollars going to our public schools?
Well, we have a whole nother problem with the Education Department about how slow they've been. But, our Constitution is pretty clear and fantastic. We have the Article 1 body, the U.S. Congress, the House and the Senate, that passes laws. We have the power of the purse. We decide where money should be spent. And then we have the Article 2 body, the executive branch, the president and all of his appointees and employees who carry it out. And we're having, I would say, greater problems with this administration in carrying out what Congress passes. In other words, in the past, even if there's Democrats and Republicans and we tussle over what the best policy is, once Congress passes something, the administration, carries it out. And here, the administration is trying to divert the money. So she's moving forward with her plan. We're telling her it's not acceptable. And as you mentioned, a number of states are suing her because they also believe, attorneys general from a number of states are suing her because they believe that she's violating the CARES Act. But, this is part of a larger situation where we have to decide what to do about public education or all schools in the fall. And that's even a much bigger problem because the House 11 weeks ago passed the HEROES Act, which provided another $56 billion just for K-12, about $90 billion overall for education from pre-K to universities. And then we also passed the Moving Forward Act, our big infrastructure bill that provides $250 billion for schools, which desperately need to do things like improve their HVAC systems, their heating and cooling systems, to have better air filtration to deal with COVID. And the Senate, isn't doing anything on these matters. What they've proposed only in the last few days is, a fraction of what we intended. And plus, as you've seen, the president and Secretary Devos are shouting from rooftops, open schools no matter what, just open. And they're trying to condition funding, Tyler, on schools reopening fully, like basically blackmail. We'll provide federal funding, but you won't really get your share unless you open fully. And that, you can't do that in a public health emergency. I mean, that's just outrageous. What if one community has mass community spread of COVID going on and another community or state in another part of the country is in great shape? The idea that they both should do the same thing, no epidemiologist would say that. This is so far above political party, Tyler. Let's just be guided by science and doctors. That's what I say.
For parents who are struggling to make these decisions about their kids going back to school in the fall, what advice are you giving to parents with the child care issue? That's another glaring light that is coming out of this.
Yeah, well, it's really a big problem. And we also provided a lot of funding for child care in the HEROES Act that also is not in what the Senate has proposed. So we're really negotiating to try to have a relief package that actually works for the American people. I mean, I think every family has to decide for themselves based on what are the parents' health conditions. Are there grandparents or other adults involved? The whole thing about both child care and public schools or all schools is that you're bringing together people, kids, but also teachers and other staff for, how they say you shouldn't be within 6 feet of someone for 5 or 10 minutes. People are there for 6 hours, 8 hours a day with all this mixing going on. And so it's a real problem for families that have, maybe older folks or people with pre-existing conditions in the household. And then the availability of childcare is another huge, huge problem. It's we need to devote a lot more resources to it than we have, and that's what I'm fighting to do. But so far, the Senate hasn't agreed to do it.
U.S. Representative Andy Levin with us on the Oakland County Megacast, all throughout the local area, on television, on the radio, and on other media outlets such as Facebook via Facebook Live. Representative Levin, as we continue to see this battle between the House of Representatives and their HEROES Act and the Republicans in the Senate and their HEALS Act, we are having that negotiation, that tug and pull one way or the other. But these funds for a lot of states and municipalities are needed as soon as possible. In some cases, these funds for programs for municipalities and so on were needed yesterday. And we're hearing from yesterday. We heard from Senator Chuck Schumer as well as the President's Chief of Staff Mark Meadows that those negotiations are making some progress. They're moving forward, but they're still a ways away from any fruitful completion that gets the second supplemental ready to go, ready to be passed, and ultimately the money to be distributed to these different resources. How far away do you presume that we are from an agreement being made, from compromise being made in Washington on this clearly necessary funding that needs to go to the states, to these municipalities, to these various programs, etc.?
Well, Tyler, let me say two different things about that. One is to sort of try to answer your question directly. They have now dug into kind of an issue by issue negotiation, which should have happened. We passed the HEROES Act on May 15th. 1,000 Americans have died of COVID, formally recorded as dying of COVID since then. And the Senate, has only now acted. So this should have been going on months ago. But I just want to, I'm afraid I totally agree with your premise, but the Republicans do not. You say this aid for local governments is so needed. The HEALS Act has $0.00 for state and local governments. The HEROES Act, our bill, had $915 billion for state governments, counties, cities, and townships, and villages, and tribal and territorial governments like, Puerto Rico or the Marineros or whatever. But in terms of Michigan, the HEROES Act would give the state of Michigan over $7 billion in 2020 and over $6 billion in 2021, plus aid to every local government. And we know here, if you go back to the K-12 discussion, how much of the K-12 budget comes from the state? A lot of it. And if we pass the HEROES Act funding, Michigan has said so far their deficit from this COVID disaster is about $6.5 billion. So the $7 billion we would provide in 2020 would pretty much keep Michigan in good shape and prevent them from having to slash the budget of K-12 and universities, and so many other things. So just to give you a few examples of the differences, the HEROES Act has $13 an hour hazard pay for essential workers. There's no hazard pay in the HEALS Act. The HEROES Act has up to $6,000 for families of stimulus payments. The HEALS Act just has $1,200 per tax filer. Then there's the state and local funding I mentioned. The HEROES Act extends all the unemployment benefits, including the extra $600 a week, through January 31st. The HEALS Act gives $200 a week through October 5th, and then a very complicated formula that the states won't be able to implement after that. Something we haven't even mentioned, we have $75 billion in the HEROES Act for testing, contact tracing, and supported isolation, plus language from my Coronavirus Containment Corps Act, or CCC Act, to actually set up a contact tracing workforce. Our Governor Whitmer's had to try to do this with volunteers. And the HEALS Act has $16 billion, so a fraction of the money and no language requiring the CDC to get moving on a national contact tracing program. There are really big differences. We have the best negotiator on the planet, Nancy Pelosi, working with the Senate and the White House. And, we're pushing very hard to have something closer to what we passed than what the Senate passed. Tyler, let me just say this. We saw the report last week that the second quarter marked by far the greatest contraction of our economy in one quarter in the recorded history of our economy since before World War II. And it's probably a bigger contraction than any quarter during the Great Depression. We've got to get out of our little political bubbles and our little ideologies and step up to the plate and do what's necessary to, as Ronnie said, I think, keep, have childcare there for people who have to go to work. Give people enough money that they can make their car payment, their rent, whatever. We're going to have mass hunger, mass evictions, people losing their homes because they can't pay their mortgage unless we help. And the thing that people have to realize is the deficit and all those problems would get way worse if we don't help people now, because we'll have a structural disaster in the economy for at least several years if we don't help people get through this.
This virus does not know boundaries, does not know state lines, does not know politics, should there be a national response to try to contain it?
You are so right. I think it was in March that I started calling for Donald Trump to use the full powers of the Defense Production Act to say, look, we won World War II by coming together and making everything we needed. And of course, our Detroit played a huge role in that, the arsenal of democracy. Now we're facing the biggest public health crisis in a century, and we need to do everything we can. So he should have said, we're going to procure or make everything we need for testing, which we still haven't done, everything we need for protection, personal protective equipment, the famous PPE, which we still haven't done, and everything we need for treatment, from ventilators and medicines up to a vaccine. And we still haven't done that. The thing is, Ronnie, it's so patriotic, right? We already have this Defense Production Act law that gives the president the power to give guaranteed contracts to companies to make everything we need with U.S. workers on American soil, rebuilding our economy. And I don't understand why he wouldn't do it, because I think it fits his politics. As you say, this goes above politics. Secondly, in addition to the Defense Production Act, we need to have a public health approach to this. Our country has perhaps had the least competent response to this of any wealthy nation in the world. I'm sorry to say it, but our reproduction rate of the virus, our death rate, however you measure it, is higher than almost any other country in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, whatever. And the reason is just what you say. The president said, the buck stops in Lansing and in Providence, Rhode Island, and in Olympia, Washington, and what are all the state capitals, and let all the mayors and governors duke it out over PPE. No, this is the moment when, for a president to say, okay, we're going to take a public health approach to this. We're going to get this virus's reproduction rate down well below 1. In other words, each person infected infects less than one other person, so that it shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. And then we're going to have mass testing and contact tracing, so that we know that any little time there's a flare-up, we can snuff it out, because we know who's got it, and then we can see who they've been with, warn those people, test those people, help them isolate. And again, Ronnie, I see this as like patriotic. I mean, what the heck? We're talking about putting a couple 100,000 Americans to work as contact tracers. This is something they would never forget. The rest of they'd be telling their grandkids, right? Yeah, way back in 2020, I helped beat that famous COVID-19, and then we could put more people to work by saying, hey, a lot of the people that need to quarantine, they may have kids or people at risk in their household or roommates. Let's open some hotels, which are out of commission mostly, to house people, and we'll pay the hotels to be open. The people need to eat. Let's, pay some restaurants to feed them safely. And the public health response could be the tip of the sword of reopening, instead of acting like public health and economic activity are at odds. No. A good public health response is the very basis of reopening the economy safely. Germany's figured that out. New Zealand's figured that out. South Korea's figured that out. Why our president can't figure that out, I don't know. But I'm afraid to say, I'm pretty sure it's the greatest failure of executive function in the modern history of the presidency. Any party, any kind of crisis. And the American people are paying a horrifying price for it.
U.S. Representative Andy Levin with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Representative Levin, just another couple minutes with you before we got to let you go. Anything else you'd like to touch on today before we say goodbye?
Well, yeah, there's a lot else going on. And I just want to say something about a positive thing that happened locally. which is, it's sort of like a negative and a positive thing, I guess, Tyler. But, we had this 15-year-old girl, African-American girl from my home high school, my district. She's a Groves student. People are calling her Grace. And, I think a judge who I understand has a great reputation and, whatever, I think made a huge mistake by, locking her up, putting her in detention because she didn't do her homework. And I just want to say thank you to all of my colleagues in Congress who joined me in making good trouble about this, as John Lewis would say, all the demonstrators and people in the community who creatively raised their voices, went out there. And thank you to the Michigan Court of Appeals for quickly looking at this situation on Friday and saying, in the middle of a pandemic, when the governor has an executive order saying kids should not be incarcerated unless they're an immediate threat to somebody, that this girl belongs home with her mom. And I think that's a great outcome, but it's another lesson for us that systemic racism is, it's not about you being a racist or me being a racist. Take a deep breath, look around. Our whole society is shot through with structures that, hold up white supremacy. And I think that it's to everybody's benefit to look at these things and try to tackle them. So my colleague from Boston, Ayanna Pressley, has been a leader on this. She's a freshman like me, but she's, as I learned, because of Grace. Representative Pressley's been leading on this when she was in the Boston City Council. And in fact, before even then, she has a bill on this that I've joined on. And I found out that, I'm the vice chair of the House Education and Labor Committee, and we have jurisdiction over juvenile detention. So I'm going to get involved in trying to figure out how to reduce this kind of disproportionate effect of punishment, suspensions, sending kids to juvenile detention that really affects Black kids, kids of color, and Black girls in particular, disproportionately. Congresswoman Presley's bill is called the Ending Pushout Act. And so, I'm really happy that Grace is out, and I got a good lesson in it and from it. And I'm going to, try to step up and advocate for kids like that all across the country.
Representative Levin, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Ronnie. Thanks for all your great work keeping our community informed. I loved your previous segment about people. It's too late to vote. Put your absentee ballot in the mailbox, folks. Take it into your clerk. That was really helpful. Thank you.
We appreciate having you on. U.S. Representative Andy Levin with us on the Oakland County Megacast as we continue to battle through this COVID-19 pandemic. So many complicated issues, like we talked with State Representative Jim Ellison about. It's the same deal on the federal level, and there's so much negotiation still being ongoing, as these are complicated issues. It's not going to be solved by one idea or another idea. It's going to be resolved through creative problem solving and through compromise. And it happens a little bit slower. It tends to happen in Washington than it does maybe in other places. But the process is in motion at the very least, and I think that that's some positive that we can take out of the situation.
Yeah, this is a time for our elected leaders to reach a hand across the aisle to make a decision. Let's try to put some of the politics aside. It's been so divisive, hard to get things actually done in D.C. right now, so we need them to reach across the aisle and do what is best for America during this pandemic.
It's been my take all throughout the course of this pandemic that there will be a time for us to fight on these issues. There is going to be a time for us to point fingers and say, you were wrong here, you were wrong here, that was a dumb decision, that was careless. But right now, we're in a process where we have to solve problems. And the way you solve problems is through discussion, through negotiation, through thinking outside of your own thought process and thinking outside of the box, as the cliche goes. And so there will be a time for us to fight. there will be a time for us to argue about what we could have done better, and for all of us on either side of the aisle, whatever your political affiliations are, whatever your opinions are, to Monday morning quarterback the COVID-19 pandemic. But the fact of the matter is we still have to first get through the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, as we continue forward, businesses in the state of Michigan and Oakland County especially, and all throughout the U.S. have continued to be affected by COVID-19 and other continuous issues in the local, state, and federal level, and that includes businesses in our local area. But there's also a lot of positive going on, as a certain boom of business is happening in Oakland County, and that is certainly so to an extent in the city of Pontiac. We're pleased to be joined once again by Dominique Head. He is the chairperson of the Pontiac Regional Chamber, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Dominique, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate having you on. How have you been? How's the chamber been doing since we last spoke?
Oh, it's been great. Lots of activity. I think there's lots of planning going on around Pontiac. We've seen some really great stories come out of the city overall. And, we're excited about, what I call the on-ramp to the new economy. And we're excited about that and how it's shaping out.
Well, talk to us a little bit about that, as you said, on-ramp to the new economy, and as it relates to business in Pontiac. We recently spoke with Mayor Deirdre Waterman about a number of programs through the city that are being enacted to help the local business community in Pontiac. Of course, the new Amazon facilities are going up. One of them is up and running and is actively hiring. And there's so many new opportunities in Pontiac. So elaborate a little bit for us on what that is.
I think there's some really great leadership that's coming to the community. I mean, you look at Matt Ishbia and his dad bringing Shore Mortgage in, and their construction project and their expansion that's happening on South Boulevard. I think they're great leaders for the community in the sense of just demonstrating the principles of entrepreneurship. I know Pontiac has a deep, rich history with entrepreneurship, and I think seeing family-owned businesses come back to the city is really important. You have Williams International, aerospace and engineering business, which is a family-owned business. So I think there's a lot of value in having family-owned businesses come to the city and seeing them represent the principles of building, strong businesses for not only national reach, but international reach.
I know Amazon is a big project that is coming to Pontiac. You have United Shore. How important to the city of Pontiac is it to have some of these larger businesses? But at the same time, it looks like the brakes have been put on due to COVID-19 for some of the smaller businesses in that downtown region.
Yeah, I think, again, one of the things that I want to stress more than anything, I think, with the family businesses that have come to Pontiac, United Shore and Williams International, I think they bring a sense of a pride and ownership in the city that makes a significant difference. I think with the likes of Amazon, it's another entrepreneurial business from Jeff Bezos and his crew, and doing their expansion across the nation and pretty much across the globe. So what we're seeing is, that expansion in the kind of the small to large businesses. And you have great businesses that are opening even through the COVID crisis. So you have Flavors of Jamaica opening. You also have a bakery, I think it's C&G Bakery, opening in the city of Pontiac. So some business owners are, following through with their plans that happened before COVID. I think that's to be commended. And, there's some people who are, screeching the brakes, and some people who are pivoting. So you have organizations in downtown, especially the food service industry, who are finding how to pivot and find new customers and make their revenues work.
So let's talk a little bit about the city of Pontiac and the Phoenix Center. It has been such a long debate about what to do with the Phoenix Center. I live right near that area in Kego, and you go through, and the Phoenix Center is there. Is that going to, what are the plans for it? Let's just say, what are the future plans for the Phoenix Center? Because it is such, a big point of contention there in the city of Pontiac.
I don't know exactly what the plans are. I've spoke with Deidre Waterman and Kermit Williams and Vince Leonardis from All Construction. And, part of it is the funding of making that building work, right? So I know the point of contention was, do we spend, the $7 million we have today, or do we go out for a bond? So that was the primary issue. And I think, one of the pieces that we really have to, start to develop some prowess in as a city is around economically financing our plans. So I know they're working that out between Deidre and Kermit, and, I suspect they'll be able to get that done. I know it's a difficult and tough decision to make. Looming in the background is you were once in emergency financial management, and I'm sure that, that weighs heavily on their mind about how to make these economic decisions, and, with the eye on the future and making sure that they do a great job with the money they're entrusted with.
Dominic Head with us. He is the chairman of the Pontiac Regional Chamber with us on the Oakland County Megacast. And Dominic, we talk about all the great programs and help from the city of Pontiac, from Mayor Waterman's office, and from other leadership in the city in helping this economic boom in the city of Pontiac. There's also been a lot of programs enacted on the county level through Oakland County to help local businesses that were struggling through this pandemic to either stay afloat or potentially put themselves in a position to pivot and maybe thrive despite the circumstances that they're under. How critical have those programs been to businesses in Pontiac so far, and how critical will they be as more funding is allotted to them through these programs going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I was, before we talked today, I was looking at some numbers, and, 32.9% contraction in the second quarter in GDP across the nation, can kind of tell you, small business owners need that kind of financial support. And I think the county has done a great job of stepping up multiple times. They're currently, doing their second round of funding. First round was stabilization. This round is the reopening funding, along with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation coming in with funding. So I think that when you look at it, small business owners are going to need money either to pivot, right, or they're going to need money to reopen. And I think part of, that game plan has to be not only providing the money, but also providing the technical expertise. And I know the county's definitely stepped up a lot to provide that technical expertise.
So a lot of people are staying home a lot more. For people who live in the Metro Detroit area and they haven't been to Pontiac in, let's say, the last 5-10 years, what do you want them to know about Pontiac, how it's changed, and what they should see and visit?
Yeah, I think, Pontiac has I think it's the best melting pot in Oakland County. You have the Hmong community, you have the Latin or Hispanic community, African American, and then you have those communities that broaden the cultural aspects of Pontiac, and you have some really great operators in the city, from Sheila's Bakery, Erebus Escape, right, Fillmore 13, X-Fermentation. These are some of the operators in the community that really do a great job to make sure that Pontiac has a really great environment. You got Jalapenos, Carnival Market, which is a great place to just go grab lunch on Walton Boulevard or Avenue. So there's a lot to be desired in Pontiac, and there's a lot of great operators in the community doing a really great job of building kind of some cultural assets, right? And especially if you look at the Crowfoot in downtown Pontiac, they're a great venue for performing artists. So I know they have a great reputation with artists all over the country to bring musical acts in, and they partner really well with those acts. So there are plenty of places, whether it's Elam's or Avon Donuts on Woodward. So you have really great operators who are providing really great businesses. Not to mention you have, the Marriott Hotel, which still sits in Pontiac, which is a great place to, get away for the weekend. So those are, places that I think are really important to the city. And that's not to mention you have the Zoloft family operating M1 Concourse. You got PMD manufacturing in downtown Pontiac. You got George Kakarian, who owns the soccer arena. I mean, there's lots of historical assets. There's lots of great operators in the community who can make a difference for people who are visiting. Not to mention, the natural assets that we have, whether it's, the Crystal Lake Golf Course, or you're talking about the Clinton River walking trail. So I think, if there's something you want to do in Pontiac, you'll definitely find that opportunity. Whether it's food, whether it's entertainment, or if you're interested in sports, there's those types of things to participate in. And then not to mention, there's generally something going on every weekend. Last weekend we hosted a sizzling summer event for parents and students in the city. And we had, 100 people come out, and there was another festival across the street at City Hall, and there was another festival in the park over on Mount Combe. And so there are always, events going on in the city. One of the things I think that historically I call Pontiac is like, it's the city for very great private parties, right? So there's always some private party going on in the city that people don't know about. And people are like, what's that party over there? So I think that's one of the great things about Pontiac.
Dominique Head with us, the chairperson of the Pontiac Regional Chamber, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Dominique, just another minute or two with you before we got to let you go. Anything else that you'd like to touch on, or that's important for our audience to know about the Chamber's work, about the business community in the city of Pontiac?
Yeah, one of the things I would say that's really great about the city of Pontiac is the love, right? There's a lot of love, externally and internally for the city of Pontiac. And we've been working together to create values for one of the nonprofits that we're working on. And, as I looked at everyone's story that I've had a, one-to-one conversation with, who's working in or around Pontiac, one, they work hard as hell. And two, there's an affinity for the city that is overwhelming, right? Because they could take their talents and their abilities anywhere in the world, right? They have master's degrees, PhDs, but they're focusing their energy and their love and their, power to make the city of Pontiac a better place. And so, for those people, in and around Oakland County, I want to say I really appreciate your support and, seeing the transformation of Pontiac. And we really appreciate all the love from everyone who works here day in and day out.
Well, Dominique, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Dominique Head, the chairman of the Pontiac Regional Chamber, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back with our last guest today, who will help you with some information on how to cook better meals at home while you continue to cook at home during this pandemic. That and more coming up. The Oakland County Megacast returns after this short break. You're watching and listening to us on our family of TV, radio, and online outlets.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jonay Khaldun. I'm the Chief Medical Executive for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. The people who are at highest risk of getting severely ill from COVID-19 are the elderly and those with chronic medical conditions. That includes people with heart disease, diabetes, COPD, or those who have compromised immune systems. People who are in those categories should right now be staying at home as much as possible and not going out if it is not essential. If you fit into one of those categories, those are the things you should do. And if you have a family member who fits into one of those categories, you should be checking in on them and making sure they are following those guidelines. There's something everyone can do to protect the community from COVID-19.
This may seem uncomfortable, but so is being hooked to an IV, sleeping in a hospital bed, and fighting for your life. When it comes to COVID-19, comfort is not as important as saving lives. Wearing a mask can greatly reduce the chance of spreading the virus. So mask up, Michigan, every time you leave home.
Hi, my name is Kurt Lawson, and I'm the Public Information Officer for West Bloomfield Township. We wanted to reach out to you, our older adults, to provide information that you may find useful during this difficult time. We want to ensure you that West Bloomfield Town Hall, our Waters and Utility Department, West Bloomfield Parks, and our police and fire departments continue to work hard on your behalf. Information and resources can be found on the Township website, the police Facebook and Twitter, or call West Bloomfield Park's COVID-19 help hotline. Please remember to keep your social distance of at least 6 feet, wear facial coverings when you leave your home, and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap. These precautions will help keep you safe during these difficult times.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM, our flagship TV and radio station. As well as 88.1 WBFH, The Biff, we are on today, and Birmingham Area Municipal Access. In addition, we're pleased to be joined by the West Bloomfield Township Clerk's Office today, our Facebook partner on today's broadcast on the Oakland County Megacast. You can tune in Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon to us on a variety of community television, radio, and other media outlets for exclusive interviews with experts on COVID-19 and other people from throughout the community telling the stories of our communities as we continue through this crisis. Our last guest today, she is a food and lifestyle writer and a cooking instructor, and is also the owner of Annabel Cohen Cooks Detroit. We are pleased to be joined by Annabel Cohen, now on the Oakland County Megacast. Annabel, thank you for being with us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Appreciate having you on. How are you? How have you been throughout the pandemic?
I'm good. The pandemic, as a caterer, slammed the brakes onto catering events, and I think that's what we're here to talk about today. And it's turned everybody into great cooks. Everyone's baking. They said if you haven't had banana bread, if you haven't made banana bread, you haven't gone through the COVID. It's really amazing how everyone has become so much more comfortable cooking. Not just for their families, but for intimate gatherings as well.
So, Annabel, now that the restrictions are lightening up a little bit more, are you having people call you to come in and cater some of those small events, or maybe even to give cooking lessons?
Both. I've done Zoom cooking classes. I've done some for charity. I've done some for myself. I've been catering so many weddings, like 1 or 2 weddings a weekend, which is not... Normally, it's not my forte, because as an off-premise caterer, I do most events in people's homes or in certain venues, but a lot of venues don't allow outside caterers to cater. So instead, if people are bringing their 200 people weddings and bringing them home and having backyard under a tent for 20 people. So I've picked up a lot of that kind of business, and it's so nice to be part of people's life cycle events.
So during all of this, what's your top 3 cooking tips?
Top 3 cooking tips. Don't over shop. If a lot of people are having a hard time going to the supermarkets these days, so they're bringing things in, and sometimes they bring in a lot. So cooking can get really, really boring. I've been watching these amazing chefs, and they're talking about they can't even look at their own food anymore, and that's what happens when you cook a lot. But if you buy small quantities of foods, recipes now, instead of being for 6 and 8 people, my recipes are now all for 1 or 2 people, and so you don't have to buy very much. It gets very, very boring to eat the same food every day. Some people love leftovers. I'm not a leftover gal, so my first cooking tip would be not to overbuy, because for cooking we might as well cook a lot. It's the less you cook, the more you'll enjoy cooking, believe it or not, because you'll be cooking more often, but not recipes that are super, super long or involved with a million ingredients.
Annabel Cohen with
Number
us.
2.
Go for it.
Okay. The second one is, and I say this in all my cooking classes. I once read a cookbook review that went something like this: anybody who follows the recipe the way it's written gets what they deserve. And it's so perfect. You have to sort of be active in your cooking. Baking is a little bit different. It's hard to, you can't riff very much when you're baking a cake, because you're putting a liquid in the oven and you're hoping it comes out as a solid, but not too solid. But cooking, you have to be very, very active in your cooking. For example, my red wine vinegar may not taste the same as your red wine vinegar. Different manufacturer, different acidity, different strength. So you have to kind of cook as you go along. If you use a recipe as a guide, any recipe really only is a guide. It's not meant to be followed absolutely exactly, even though a lot of people do. And then they end up with something that they call a boring, the soup is boring or is bland. Well, the cure to blandness is salt, or a little bit of lemon juice, or some cayenne pepper. Basically, the second tip is to not follow the recipe exactly as it's written. Don't vary too far, but definitely taste and do things to your own specific tastes. My third tip, since you're asking me for my top 3, is to use, every once in a while, just have a raw dinner, whether that's a salad with lots of chopped vegetables, with fresh fruit at the end. Especially in the summer, it's been so hot, although amazingly today I'm talking to you and it's nice and cool. But when you eat a lot of raw things, you're not firing up the stove. You're not heating up the oven. You're not heating up your house. And you're also changing your way of eating. A lot of people who aren't eating out as much as they used to would have a salad for lunch, but they don't think of necessarily having a salad for dinner. And so my third tip would be to do some raw meals, change it up a little bit, not have everything hot or even cooked. And I think you'll have a good time in your kitchen. I think people are having a good time in their kitchen.
Annabel Cohen with us on the Oakland County Megacast. She is the owner of Annabel Cohen Cooks Detroit and is also a food and lifestyle writer and a cooking instructor. So as people are continuing to cook at home and they're not eating out as much, they're not necessarily ordering in as much as maybe they were before the pandemic, experimentation and trial and error is so critical to developing skills in the kitchen. As you had mentioned, saying following those recipes as a guide instead of a dead set roadmap is the way to go. What should people do as they're getting through that process to trial and error, to experiment a little bit? What steps should they take to get started in that so that they're not jumping in too far and making a mistake that maybe will not be very pleasant for their palate, but are able to engage in that creativity a little bit?
Well, the first thing I tell people is, if you think you screwed something up, don't throw it away. And just because it's supposed to be chocolate mousse and it doesn't settle doesn't mean it can't be a chocolate sauce that you serve over ice cream. This is almost the same, another advice that people give when they do knitting. If you make a mistake, stop right there. Don't continue and have to rip something out. The only problem that really can't be fixed when you're cooking is if you burn something, because a burn smell goes right into the food, and you can try hiding it a million different ways. But if you burn the rice, throw it out and start again. However, if you are making another dish and it's not completely cooked through, of course you can always cook it more. If your roast doesn't taste very good or it's too stringy, chop it up and put some barbecue sauce on it and make pulled barbecue beef sandwiches. I guess just because you think something's ruined, it may not be ruined forever. The recipe you followed may not be exactly right, but you can always transform other foods into something else. For example, if you make your soup way too salty, divide it in half, add a bunch of vegetables or other ingredients, pasta, potatoes, whatever you want, into one half. Freeze the other half and use the other half another time. Because it's hard to take salt. You can't take salt out of food, but you'll have to dilute it or stretch it other ways to make it less salty. But it doesn't mean it goes into the garbage can at that point.
Annabel Cohen with us. She is the owner of Annabel Cohen Cooks Detroit, a food and lifestyle writer, as well as a cooking instructor with us on the Oakland County Megacast. So much great advice she's given to our audience so far about continuing to cook through the remainder of this pandemic and even beyond. Annabel, as we're going forward, if people have more questions or are looking for some advice or looking to take some classes, how can they find more information?
Well, if you go to just call me. I have my phone numbers on my website. It's also on my Facebook page. If you can get 8 people together, we can do a hands-on cooking class from afar. They cost about as much as you would pay if you went to Sur La Table or to Williams-Sonoma. So the classes are not cheap when they're hands-on. But if you get a bunch of people together, and I've been doing this a lot, we can do a cooking class that's a lot less expensive with Zooming, where everybody can sort of watch me cook. You don't get to eat it at the end, but you get a lot of ideas. I just did one recently for charity, where I did 10 fast and fabulous appetizers. In 1.5 hours, we did 10 appetizers. But that was just me cooking and people watching. If you want to do a cooking class, which takes about 2.5 to 3 hours, basically I send you ingredient lists ahead of time, and you buy the ingredients and we cook together. I get to watch what you're doing. You get to watch what I'm doing. I can answer your questions right then and there. And in the end, we all eat in our own places, our own homes. But, we can do social distancing cooking classes all together as well. I've been doing cooking classes out of my house. And I have a nice big counter, and that works out well to have a few people. But the Zoom cooking classes are really, really a lot of fun. It's just like your Zoom meetings or your Zoom family occasions, and you learn too. And I always have good tips, because basically you can find any recipe you want on the internet, but there are certain tips and shortcuts that are fun to learn.
Annabel, what permanent changes do you think is going to come out of this for the catering business?
It's interesting because we were getting away from packaging. It used to be that the less packaging, the better. And now everything is more packaged, including catering foods. People are ordering more sort of boxed lunches or bag lunches, or they're, I catered a wedding yesterday, and at the end of the buffet, we did a buffet. At the end of the buffet, before you started, the guests don't touch anything. They can't touch anything. Basically, we hand them a plate and silverware and a napkin, and they go through a buffet line, but it's all served by my staff. And the staff is in masks and they're in gloves, and everybody puts on a mask at the end of the buffet and sanitizes, and they hold their plate. We put masks in a cute little jug or container or basket, and everybody puts one on. Only one time, and that was yesterday, did somebody refuse to put on a mask to go through the buffet line. I said, I don't care what you do, I need to leave the buffet line. But when you're in the food, when you're with the food, you can't touch anything, and we don't want you breathing on anything. And the guy got really mad. His wife ended up making him a plate, but we are all seeing a lot of people right now, caterers. We're doing a lot of parties, but they're really a lot smaller. And we have to, it's not in my best interest for anybody to get sick. Let's put it that way. And I don't want to bring anything back to my 85-year-old mom, and nobody wants to bring anything back either. And we're seeing a lot of people. So it is interesting when people don't cooperate, but people are cooperating more. And so we have not just packaging of yourself, putting on a mask and sanitizing, but box lunches, bag lunches, modified buffets. We don't use a screen, but mostly everything is very, very, very sanitary, extremely sanitary. And 90% of our parties are completely outside. Now, yesterday it rained all morning, so we had to, you'll excuse me, I'm taking my mom to a doctor's appointment, so I'm in a hospital. People are going to have less choices, because if you're given a box lunch, you're given whatever's in that box lunch. Everybody's got to be on their best behavior. Let's put it that way.
Annabel, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And check out my website, Annabel Cohen Cooks Detroit. And I have a Facebook page as well. And I often put down recipes, and I have a lot of photos and some other ideas. Anything that interests me ends up on my page.
Well, Annabel, we appreciate it. Thank you for being with us today. Annabel Cohen, the owner of Annabel Cohen Cooks Detroit, and also a food and lifestyle writer and a cooking instructor, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. We appreciate having her on and appreciate you joining us as well. As people continue to be cooking their own meals at home, continue to engage in some creativity in their kitchens as they attempt to go forward with this coronavirus pandemic. And maybe if one thing good comes out of this, it'll be more family mealtime at home.
You know, one thing I do like the thought of doing a Zoom cooking school with other people. So maybe it's someone's birthday gift or an anniversary gift. That might be a good way of doing that. Hey, let's all cook together, but we are all in our own kitchens. Kind of like Zoom happy hours, but you're doing a Zoom cooking hour as well.
Well, I think we're definitely going to see a lot more interaction, a lot more creativity in the home and out in the public at the end of this pandemic, whenever that may be. That is going to do it for our show today. Before we go, I want to remind you again, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus is where we have your top headlines each and every day about COVID-19 and other top stories in the local area, as well as resources from the Centers for Disease Control, the state of Michigan, Oakland County, and our local municipalities as well. We will be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 12 noon, right here on the Megacast, as well as Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday on Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, 88.1 WBFH The Biff, and our other community partners via Facebook Live. We would like to thank Steve Kaplan, Representative Jim Ellison, U.S. Representative Andy Levin, and Pontiac Regional Chamber Chairperson Damani Head, as well as Annabel Cohen, our entire crew, and you for tuning in. The Megacast will return on Tuesday.